What is up, guys and gals? Today let's show you how to break down, service and reassemble this Penn Wrath 5000 with some tips and tricks along the way. Now, as you may know, I'm going to search for a schematic for this just so I can see where the parts go and any part numbers in case I need to replace anything in here. Now, one thing I do know about this reel is that the instant anti-reverse does not always work. We can see right there it's engaged. But if I crank it and go backwards, we lose it. We'll show you how to fix that if possible, so you don't have any downtime for this reel while you wait for the new part to come in. Hopefully we can get that done for you. We're going to start by removing the handle, and the way you do this is removing that knob over there. And the reason you can tell that you need to remove this knob to get the handle off is that if you crank it, you'll see that knob turning. You're gonna have a piece under there, that's just the washer or bushing that goes in it. Now all we have to do is pull this out. Hopefully it just comes straight out. And there we go. Now I'm gonna undo this drag knob just by going backwards. And putting that straight up. Now since we're here, let's go ahead and work on breaking this drag down, checking it, make sure it's all good, and then putting it back together. To do that, I'm gonna pop this spring off. I'm gonna look for the open area, stick a screwdriver in there, push in and up while I hold my finger over it, just so it doesn't go shooting somewhere. Now we can just get this rest of the stack out. And for the clicker on the bottom, I will show you how to take that off and put it back on because it could be a little tricky, and if you need to replace it, then at least you know how to do it. I'm undoing that screw, gently letting go of it so that that can pop off. And we can just drop it out. Now we can see the drag stack there. Everything looks fine to me. It doesn't look like there's anything that needs to be done to it. But if we wanted to clean this stuff up and then re-lube it, we could take a paper towel, just stick it in between it and squeeze until we get the majority of that oil off of it. And if you are to re-grease this, you are using oil for these felt washers, not drag grease. But on some cases you can do that. Now to clean this out, I'm just gonna take a paper towel, just kind of wipe that out. Like so, since it's not so bad in there. And the same for the bottom. If I needed to get into anything deeper, I would use something like a toothbrush, like so, or possibly even my screwdriver to kind of get down in there and dig some stuff out of there. For this clicker, all we have is the screw, this bushing that's underneath there, and of course that spring that's attached to it. I'm gonna leave it on there, but that's basically how it looks. Now we'll start with the bottom side and reinstall this clicker assembly. Before I do so, let me show you the grease and the oil I'll be using. Oil will be Speedex and the grease will be Penn Wheel Grease. So the first thing I'll do is add some oil around that bushing right there like that. Drop the click tongue over it, looking just like that. I'm gonna take some grease, add it to the tip of my screwdriver, stick that in there. Then I'm gonna take this and drop it over inside looking like that. Just in the general area of the hole, and then take this screwdriver and just find the hole and screw it in. You can go as hard as you want at this point because that bushing protects it from going too snug. Now I'll take my pick tool, rotate that, and connect that into the spring over that post. It might take you a couple tries to get this. And there we go. Now that that's installed, I'm going to take some more oil, add it to right there, kind of work that under the click tongue itself, and then work it in. Now for this, I'm just going to take the drag washers, drop them back in. We have that first drag washer, then we have a keyed washer going in. Next drag washer. Then we have an aired drag washer, looking like that. And you can follow along. Now when we get there, we're going to take this spring, take one of these ends, or open ends, stick it into the channel that you'll see inside that spool itself, looking like that. So you have one down at an angle and the other one still out of it. And then we're going to work our finger around to get this put in place. We're just simply working around to pull that in and push it down. And when you get it inside there, you're going to have a situation, or you might have a situation, where it's not set into the groove or channel that it needs to be in. We're going to use a screwdriver and just kind of pick that up until it settles in place, which this one is. Now for the drag knob, you could add some oil inside of it, just a little dab, and then set it all aside. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the rotor. This is a one-piece shaft, so we have to get in here to actually pull that entire thing out. But before I do that, we can take this thrust washer off, like so. Now I'm going to remove this side cover. The way I'm going to do that is undoing this one screw on the rub guard here first. It'll expose a screw underneath, which we see right there. That is a smaller screw than the other 3 screws, so just take note of that. Now we'll go ahead and pop this up, and that should just come straight up. Now some of my washers came off there, so I'm just going to stick them back onto the main gear so we don't lose them. And now we're going to do those 2 screws there to remove the main shaft. Just pull straight up. And now we can pull this main gear out and remove this block, undo the screw inside here. Get that out. And now we can undo that screw there, which is the lock screw. And then undo that nut. You don't have to remove the plate to do this, but you can if you want to. Lefty loosey for this. Then to pull this off, we're going to rock as we pull up. And we can see there we have a little bit of corrosion going on there. So that does not bode well, but it actually gives us a good reason or a good idea as to why the anti-reverse may not be working. Now I'm going to go ahead and set things to the side with the screws that are needed for it, just so I don't get them out of order. But this is a fairly straightforward reel that I know where all the screws pretty much go. But in case you don't, you might want to do that. Now what we have left inside here is this bushing. That came out right there. Then we have a washer. And we'll break this down in a second. We're going to jump back to the housing just so we can remove the bushings on here. Seems to be a little tight fit, but out it came. And this one as well. Now to remove that pinion stack, we're going to undo those 3 screws right there. Now let's go ahead and pull this up. Ugh. That is not good. Not good at all. I'm not going to remove that plate. But let's go ahead and break this down and see what we got going on. It's pretty nasty. Now if you're looking at this, we see that all of these things are stuck on there. So I'm going to show you how you can remove this with very little effort. We're going to take our adjustable wrench, lay it right over this, get pretty close to the teeth on the gear, but you don't want to touch the teeth. And we just balance it looking just like that. Now if we need something stronger, I'll get it, but all we have to do now is just kind of whack on this side. And it just pushes everything down. Now at this point you can likely pull it off, but if you can't, you just kind of push it back down and then do the process a few more times. There's one. That's looking pretty good. And there's the last one, because I'm pretty sure it's going to come off now. And there you have it. Off they come. Now we've got that separated, we're going to check this bearing on the bottom. I got a feeling that it's not going to be good. I'm guessing there'll be a bunch of rust in there, but I'm going to open it up and check it out. Now, I'm not going to show you what I'm doing here in terms of opening this bearing up and checking it out, but I do have a video where it shows you all those steps. I'll link it at the end of this video and also in the description. All right, so the bearing wasn't too bad, so we're going to reuse that. We have this bearing coming out of this cup here, and we'll work on that in a sec, but I wanted to show you this main gear and what we do with it. Make sure we keep our washers. We see we have 4 there, but we may use less at the end. We'll see when we get there. Now this gear, what I want to check are the teeth on there to make sure there's no chips in any of the teeth. And I don't see that, and I don't see any abnormal wear. So I'm just looking at, just eyeing this over in general. The truth of the matter is you can see most of the damage if you just look at it, but sometimes there's things that you can't notice with your naked eye. But for the most part, this looks okay. I would do the same thing for the pinion gear, but that's going to be after I clean it because we have a lot of buildup on it. All right, so here we have this anti-reverse clutch that is slipping, and we can definitely see why that is when we open this up or take that sleeve out. Now, if you look inside there, it is nasty. So how can we save this so we can continue using the reel while we wait for the replacement part to come in if we don't have one on hand? I'll show you that right now. The first thing I'm going to do is take my Corrosion X and just spray it down. I'm going to let that soak for a little bit, and while I wait, I'll go ahead and clean this off. And if these things are too bad, what I can also do is put them in some Saltex. This just helps break down all the rust that's on there. But this doesn't look as terrible as it could be. So I'm going to take some 4/0 steel wool and just kind of clean around it like that. And you can see what the result is going to be. Now the outside is cleaned up quite nicely. We're going to take a pipe cleaner, this one is wire, and just push it through there and rotate it just to clean off any rust residual that may be on the inner side of that. Now we can go ahead and take this, turn it sideways, and we're going to work as much of that rust out as possible. We are not going to get this 100%. We're just not going to do it. But we're going to go forward and backward. Just imagine the rust inside there is at the bottom, and these rollers, as they spin, is picking it up and bringing it back out to the front. So we'll have to do this several times. And as you can see, I'm changing or constantly changing out my Q-tip every time I use it up. One more bout of spraying it with Corrosion X. And then one more round of cleaning. Your goal here is to get this Q-tip as close to white when you take it out of there as possible. It is virtually impossible to get it to completely white where you don't see any rust come off on it, but you still want to get pretty close to it. So you're going to do this as many times as necessary, meaning you're going to do the Corrosion X and then the Q-tips as many times as is needed to get it to that stage. All right, so now we're close enough to being there. Again, this is only a temporary fix. This is not a permanent solution. This will go bad on you at some point. But now we've gotten there. Before we do anything else to it, we're going to stick this in just to test it out. And we can see that it's working a lot better than it was before. The true test will be when we put everything back together, but I'm very confident this will work. So now that we're there, we're going to take a few drops of oil, maybe 3 or 4 drops. Stick that over it, and then just kind of work that in. And that's exactly what we're looking for, to have that spin a little freer than it was before, and the reason it was hesitating before is because of all that rust that was in there. All right, so now the last thing we're going to do here is break down this rotor. We're going to take apart the line roller and the bail assembly. And now we can take this line roller off by unscrewing that screw right there. Taking that off, that plastic washer came out. There should also be a metal washer that's on there, which is right there. And I'll show you how to put all this stuff back together. No need to worry about that. But what I am going to do is set it up in the orientation that it looks to put it back in place. So we have the metal washer, this plastic washer, the bushing. This line roller with that thick part will be facing towards the bail wire. And the last piece we have is a washer that's in there. And it does not always come out. Might be a little tricky. Looks like it's coming out there. But what I will show you is a little tip that if you can't get it out that way, just use some compressed air. And it'll loosen up to the point where it can just come out. Like so. Sometimes what happens is some oil is built up under there and it sucks it to that plate, so you can't use your screwdriver to pop it out. Now that's done, we're going to take this, rotate it, and pull out. Now that we got the bail wire out, we're going to take our finger, cover this up, we're going to press down on it as we undo that screw right there. And this is only for the bail side screw, or where the bail spring is. Let it go and gently lift up on it. We don't want that spring shooting out somewhere. We can take that out for now. But we're also going to do this cover right here. Pop that down, and what we see we have left in there besides that arm is this spring and that trip lever. We can continue on over here and remove that screw. And both of these screws are the same size, so there's no need to worry about getting them mixed up. And that's it for that. Now that's essentially the entire reel broken down. To clean this reel up, you saw some of the things I've used already, but I'll go over them again. We're using Q-tips. Just kind of get in there and dig these things out. You see you have a lot of muck right there. I may end up using an ultrasonic cleaner for this, but if I don't, I will be using Q-tips, paper towels, my trusty toothbrush. I will be using some corrosion X to break down the grease or break down the crud that's in there before I wipe them out. And I think that's about it. All right, welcome back. Now, since this reel is going to be used for mainly fishing from a kayak, I'm going to add a bit more grease than I normally would, but you get to follow along as I do this. I'm going to grease the entire metal parts inside here. Now in general, what I would do is a lot less or a lot lighter coat on here, but I kind of want to make sure this thing is protected because I know where it's going to be used. So one good tip whenever you take your reels to a repair shop or send them in, let them know what you're going to be using the reel for so they have an idea of how to service the reel or how to protect it. Because what I'm doing here will inevitably slow the reel down a little bit, but a little slower but better protection is what we're after. Well, not the slow part, but more protection. Same thing in here. get that really lathered up. That looks good. Now I'm going to add some grease right here. It might rub off, but sometimes I forget to put that there. So now at this point we can go ahead and oil our bearings. We'll just let them sit. Now we'll move on to the gears and the other metal pieces. Same deal as the housing for the reel. We're going to do a whole bunch of grease on it. And if you wanted to see a video of how to properly grease your reel, and that's for average users, not for surf users or the like, check out one of the videos that I'll link at the end of this description, and it'll show you how to do that. We want to make sure we get somewhere around that post right there that'll be going inside that crosswind block. And for this crosswind block, we're going to stick a decent amount inside that channel. And for the cover side, we'll kind of do the same thing as we did for the housing. I'm going to wipe some residual grease onto that plate or that bearing cover. Now I'm going to set this to the side and work on the rotor itself. Grease that channel right there around that post, inside that channel at top, some down in there, and some over that hole right there where the screw will be going. Kind of the same thing for this side. And we have this spring. I don't always grease this, but on this scenario I will grease it. But I do pretty much always grease that pivot that I'll pick up now, this piece. Then we have this trip arm. And I think we have this to go. You can grease that post right there inside that hole. And the same thing for the bail arm. You can grease the post inside the hole. And over that post right there, that's where that pivot will be going. And some inside there. One last thing we can do is grease inside there. Inside the line roller. And that bushing as well. We'll also have this plate, this line roller. Now we can grease here. And we'll grease inside here. Just around there and up here. We can touch up these bushings with a little bit of grease, but nothing too crazy. They don't really need it. And I think that's all we need to do in terms of greasing. If we miss something along the way, we'll just go ahead and get it done at that time. Now we'll start with the rotor first, but we'll start with the bail spring side of it. We're going to take this bail arm, or this trip arm, excuse me, drop that in there. Take our bail spring, lay it in looking like that. Then take our pivot and drop that in. Everything will be looking just like that, with that pivot below the top of the trip arm. Now I'll take my cover that up, and I'm screwing this in most of the way, but not all the way down. The reason is if I need a little bit of play on this, I want to have it when I'm setting that bail arm on top of this. Now we'll take our bail arm, we'll see that post on this side, and then we'll have that hole right there. That'll be receiving the top or the point on that pivot. And basically what we're doing is taking that, sticking it inside that hole like that, turning it. You're gonna want that trip arm to could be going inside that channel on the bottom right there, which I forgot to grease. Add a little bit right there. So we'll start that over, like so. Turn it, and we're gonna push down at an angle until it falls in place, and you can kind of feel it fall in place. We're gonna pinch down on it with our thumb, make sure it's working. We can feel it is. Then we're gonna screw that in place with one of the screws. You can snug that all the way down, and let's finish up this cover screw. Don't go too hard on that. Now we'll double check it again to make sure it's still working, and it is. Now we'll do the line roller. We'll take one of our washers, just drop it over. Take our bushing, drop that on. And our line roller, we said that the thicker part will be facing towards the bail wire, so it'll be looking like that. Take our other washer, we can put it there or on top of this. Kind of like to start it like this and just leave it like that because it doesn't really go anywhere. But if it falls off, you can work on the other side. Now I'll take this, stick it in there, and secure it with the screw. I'm not gonna snug it down yet. I'm gonna leave it a little bit loose so it has some movement to it. And now I'm gonna take this, stick that in just like so, then rotate down. Then we'll secure this side with the other screw. Go ahead and snug that one down as well. And we're gonna double check it. That feels good. Now we'll go ahead and tighten up the line roller screw. Check it one more time. Still feels good. One note when we're working our pinion stack, this anti-reverse clutch will be going with that blue side facing down towards the main gear. First we'll take one of our bearings, drop that on there. Then I'll take this and I'll drop that on there as well. Straight over it. Now we can take our bearing cup, stick our other bearing inside there, and then drop this down looking just like that. Now at this point I will take some grease and grease the entire surface area on the outside of the bottom bearing as well as the anti-reverse clutch. Now we can pinch that together, put it over it, just kind of rotate until it falls in place and just push it down. Now we'll take our bearing cover and put that on. Before I do that, I'm going to add some oil inside these holes right here. Lay it over it and then secure it with the screws. Once those are in there, we can take this spacer and put that on. The thicker part, let's wipe that off a little bit so you can see it. That thicker part at the top will be facing up towards the rotor. That groove in the spacer right there, or the bushing, will be closer to the bottom or closer to the bearing or anti-reverse clutch in the pinion gear. So just stick it over looking like that. Now at this point we can take this collar and stick that inside so we don't forget it. And now we'll take our crosswind gear, put that on, have that post somewhere towards the bottom, secure it with a screw, snug it down. I'm going to make sure it turns. It does. Leave it like that. Then we'll put the rotor on. Now for the rotor, we're going to have that squared off section on the pinion going through the squared off section on the rotor. So now we're going to take it, lay it over it, kind of rotate back and forth until we get it to fall in place. And there we go. Now we'll take this washer, drop it on there, rotate until it falls in place because it's also keyed. And it has to go around that pinion gear. Now we can lock it down with the nut. Right about there should be good. Now we'll take our plate, kind of line that up over it, find a hole for it, and then screw it in with the lock screw. Now we'll jump back to the main housing. We're gonna take our crosswind block, take that little tab, we're gonna stick it under this plate right here. But we're also gonna make sure that that post is inside that channel right there in the bottom. And I can't really show it to you because my hands are in the way. I'll just show you the end result. And look like that. And you can always hold down on it and test it to make sure it's in there. If it's riding up, then obviously it is. Kind of straighten that out. We'll take our main gear, drop that in. Now we'll take our shaft and add some grease to right there. Kind of round it up where that's interacting with the crosswind block. But we can also add some to the shaft, just a light amount, and some on the bottom here as well as on the top. Now when we stick this in, that flat side will be facing up toward the sky, looking like this. Hold on to your block, line those two up, and just push it through. Now we can secure it with the 2 screws that we have. Snug those down pretty good. Now we'll take our bushing, stick that into the left side right there. Take our shims, stick those over the main gear. And I'm gonna cover this up. Now when I cover this up, I'm gonna pinch down on this because what I wanna see is if there's any spacing or gap, and if there is, how much there is. And I don't see too much there, so that's pretty good. That should be good. I'm gonna squeeze the housing and the side cover and rotate this and see how it feels. And it feels pretty good. Now granted, when I put this together with the screws, it'll go a little tighter than I can squeeze it. But based on experience, I have knowledge that that is a good spinning reel. So now all we have left to do is secure this side cover with the screws. And as I said before, that smaller one with the sloped head will be going down here at the bottom. After you snug those down, one final check to make sure it's spinning well, which it looks like it is. And before I put this boot on, I'm going to go ahead and add some grease to right here. And the reason for that is because sometimes water will get trapped inside here. And if it sits too long, it can rust away the metal. Now I'll take our boot and put that on there and secure it with the screw. Don't snug this one down too hard because you don't want to crack that plastic. Now we'll go ahead and put on this thrust washer so we don't forget it. Stick on our spool. We can add a little bit of grease to the top right there, just to the threads. Last thing we're gonna do is work on the handle. Now I just wiped this stuff down. All we're gonna do is add some grease to right here on this shaft, some inside there. And then we can add some oil right there. And we can stick some inside there as well. And just work it in. Now before I put this handle on, I'm gonna take some oil those threads on this side screw. Stick this through and then secure it. See y'all next time.